By November 1942, the city is a graveyard of steel and stone. Paulus's army is trapped. Operation Uranus, the Soviet counteroffensive, begins on November 19. Fresh Siberian divisions, T-34 tanks rolling through the snow, smash through the weak Romanian and Italian flanks. Within days, the 6th Army is encircled. 200,000 men. Cut off. Starving. Freezing. Inside the pocket, the Germans begin to eat their horses, then their leather belts, then anything that will fill the stomach. Soviet artillery pounds the ruins without pause. Stalingrad has become less a city than a wound in the earth, bleeding both sides dry. The silly Zaitsev will emerge from the battle with 225 confirmed kills, and the title hero of the Soviet Union. But he will carry the weight of every life he took, and every comrade he lost, for the rest of his days. The turning point of the Eastern Front has arrived, not because of grand strategy, not because of brilliant generals, because ordinary people, snipers, cooks, farmers, teenage girls, refuse to let the city fall. And as the ring tightens around Paulus, another kind of unsung hero is already rising from the ashes of occupation, the partisans. Deep in the Belarusian forests, a different war is being fought, one of ambush, sabotage, and silent revenge. Shadows in the Forest ***. Summer 1943. Deep in the partisan-controlled forests of western Belarus, near the village of Naliboki, moonlight filters through the pine canopy in thin silver blades. The air smells of damp earth, pine resin, and the faint metallic bite of gun oil. A column of 20 partisans moves single file along a narrow game trail. Silent, practiced, faces blackened with soot and grease. Leading them is a woman whose name the Germans have already learned to fear. Tanya Marinovic, 24 years old, former schoolteacher from Minsk, now commander of a 60-strong detachment known simply as the Wolf. There is Yakov Pavlov, a 24-year-old sergeant from Novgorod, who with just 25 men seizes and holds a 4-story apartment building, soon nicknamed Pavlov's House, for 58 days. They turn it into a fortress. Machine guns at every window, anti-tank rifles on the roof, mines in the courtyard. German assaults break against it like waves on rock. Pavlov's men survive by rationing water from melted snow, eating whatever rats and canned food they can scavenge. When the Germans finally blow the building apart with heavy artillery, the defenders simply withdraw to the next ruin and keep fighting. There are the women. Ludmila Pavlichenko, already withdrawn from the front after wounds, had trained dozens of female snipers before Stalingrad. Now her students are here, girls barely out of their teens, faces blackened with soot, eyes hard as flint. One of them, Natasha Kovalyova, 19, lies prone on the 3rd floor of a collapsed department store. She waits 3 hours for a German officer to appear at a window across the street. When he does, careless, lighting a cigarette, she exhales half a breath and fires. The man drops. She whispers to herself, "One more," and reloads. She will survive the battle with 32 confirmed kills and a wound that cost her an arm. She will never speak of it after the war. The fighting is intimate and merciless. Men stab each other in the dark with sharpened and trenching tools. They throw bricks, bottles of burning petrol, chunks of concrete. They fight over single rooms, single stair landings, single doorways. A German soldier writes in his diary, "We advance 10 meters and lose a platoon. The Russians do not surrender. They die where they stand." And yet, amid the slaughter, small acts of humanity flicker. Soviet soldiers share the last crust of bread with wounded Germans they have just captured. A German medic risks his life to drag a dying Red Army man to shelter. These moments are rare, fleeting, almost shameful in their tenderness. War has stripped By the summer of 1942, the front had shifted south. Stalingrad waited on the horizon. And there, in the ruins of a city that refused to die, another kind of unsung heroism would be born. One fought not in forests or snow, but street by street, room by room, floor by floor. A city would become a meat grinder, and ordinary men and women would become its teeth. The meat grinder asterisk asterisk. September 23, 1942. Stalingrad. The Volga River glints copper red in the late afternoon sun. Smoke rises in thick, oily columns from the shattered skeleton of what was once a proud industrial city. Buildings lean like drunken giants. Tram rails twist upward like broken fingers. The air tastes of scorched metal, cordite, and something sweeter, burning flesh. In the ruins of the Red October tractor factory, Vasily Zaitsev, a 27-year-old senior sergeant from the Ural Mountains, presses his back against a crumbling concrete wall. His Mosin naked rests across his knees, barrel still warm from the last shot. He doesn't count kills anymore. He counts days alive. Around him, the 6th Army of General Paulus squeezes tighter every hour. German soldiers advance in short, brutal rushes, house to house, floor to floor, sometimes room to room. Soviet defenders answer with the same currency. Grenades through doorways, bayonet charges down stairwells, snipers in the attics of gutted apartment blocks. The Germans call it Rattenkrieg, rat war. The Soviets simply call it home. Zaitsev moves like water through the rubble. He knows every shadow, every pile of broken brick that can hide a man. He has already become a myth among his own, the hunter who never misses. But he is not alone. In the cellars and sewers beneath the city, thousands fight the same invisible war. He never bragged. After each kill, he would quietly smoke a pipe, say a few words in a wink to the spirits of the forest, and move on. When comrades asked how he stayed so calm, he shrugged. I just hunt. They are the prey. Simple, brutal, true. Yet his story is only one thread in a vast tapestry. As the German offensive stalled before Moscow in December 1941, the Red Army launched its first major counteroffensive. Siberian divisions, hardened by endless winters, poured west on trains, skis strapped to their packs. Among them were women, not nurses, snipers, machine gunners, pilots. Ludmila Pavlichenko, already legendary by the winter of 1942, had racked up 309 kills by the time she was wounded and withdrawn from the front. But thousands of others, teenage girls, school teachers, factory workers, trained in secret sniper schools, learned to disappear into the landscape and went out to kill. They were called Little Sisters of Death. Some never came back. Some returned with medals and nightmares they never spoke of. The Eastern Front was no longer just a clash of armies. It had become a war of individuals, each one fighting not for ideology alone, but for the simple right to see the next sunrise over their own land. The Germans had expected a quick collapse. They found instead a people who would fight with rifles, axes, kitchen knives, bare hands, and, above all, with unbreakable will. He didn't speak Russian well. He barely read, but his eyes, dark, unblinking, had spent decades reading tracks in snow. A bent twig, a disturbed powder drip, the angle of a broken branch told him everything. He would lie motionless for hours, sometimes days, letting the cold seep into his bones until even his own shivering stopped. Only then would he exhale, slowly, and press the trigger. One December morning near Lake Seliger, he spots movement. A German officer and his aide walking along a frozen stream, map in hand, laughing. Nomakhanov watches them for 20 minutes. Watches the way the officer gestures, the way the aide nods, the way their boots leave deep, careless prints. He calculates wind, distance, 400 meters, temperature dropped. Then he fires once. The officer drops. The aide freezes, looking around wildly. No Makhanoff waits. The aide kneels to check his commander. Second shot. Silence returns to the forest. He would later tally 367 confirmed kills by war's end, including 13 enemy snipers sent specifically to hunt him. The Germans nicknamed him Tiger Ghost. They offered rewards, sent special teams. None ever returned with proof. Once, after a 3-day stalk, a German sniper team finally pinned him down. They waited. He waited longer. On the 4th morning, when the enemy sniper finally raised his head to scan, Makhanoff was already gone, having crawled 2 kilometers through knee-deep snow during the night, only to circle back and take the shot from the side. As summer faded into autumn, the front hardened. Moscow loomed in German sights, but Siberian reinforcements arrived, fresh from the east. Among them, men like Seaman Makhanoff, a Vink hunter from the taiga, whose eagle eyes would claim hundreds of lives. But first, the Germans pushed deeper, unaware of the traps awaiting in the snow. What happens when a lifelong tracker turns his skills on human prey? The forests of Valdai would soon reveal hate. The hunter in the snow ***. Winter 1941. The Valdai Hills, northwest of Moscow. Temperatures plunge to -40. Breath freezes into ice crystals the instant it leaves your lungs. The wind cuts through padded jackets like a bayonet. Trees stand black and skeletal against endless white. In this frozen hell, the German 16th Army is trying to push toward the Soviet capital. But the cold is killing more soldiers than bullets. Frostbite claims toes, fingers, entire squads. And somewhere in the snow-draped pines, a small, wiry figure moves like a ghost. Semyon Makhanoff. Yevgeny, 53 years old. Born in the taiga of Chikaka, where men hunt with bows and live by the rhythm of reindeer herds. Drafted into the Red Army not because he wanted to fight a war in Europe, but because the state needed every man who could shoot straight. They gave him a sniper rifle, an SVT-40, and sent him west. He called the weapon the long stick that kills from far away. To him, Germans were no different from the wolves that once threatened his herds, dangerous but predictable if you understood their habits. When actual Soviet troops return, they find Sareta guarding a captured tank and 4 bound prisoners. Laughter mixes with awe. For this audacious feat, Sareta too received the hero of the Soviet Union. He fought on, surviving the war's horrors, his story a testament to ingenuity and desperation. Imagine it, a cook turning the tide with kitchen tools. The Eastern Front demanded such madness. These early acts of defiance, Ovcharenko's fury, Sareta's cunning, stemmed from a deeper well. The Soviet people, hardened by revolution and purges, faced an enemy bent on extermination. Hitler's directives were clear: no mercy for subhumans. Einsatzgruppen death squads trailed the Wehrmacht, murdering Jews, communists, and partisans in mass shootings. Bobby Yard, outside Kiev, saw 33,000 slaughtered in 2 days. The front became a graveyard, but resistance grew. Partisans formed in occupied territories, sabotaging supply lines, ambushing patrols. Women joined the fight, from nurses to snipers. The unsung weren't just soldiers. They were hunters, peasants, sailors, anyone with the will to strike back. August 1941. The sun beats down on a makeshift camp in the Latvian woods. Sareta stirs a pot over an open flame, the aroma of potatoes and cabbage cutting through the acrid smoke of distant artillery. Horses graze nearby, tethered to trees. Then, the growl of engines. 2 Panzer III tanks rumbling from the underbrush, machine guns swiveling. Panic surges. Sareta hides the horses in denser foliage, grabs an outdated Mosin Nagant rifle, and his trusty axe, and ducks behind the kitchen wagon. The tanks close in, turrets scanning for threats. Hard hammering, he waits. As the lead tank halts, its crew peering out, Sarita explodes into action. He charges, axe raised like a berserker from ancient tales. Climbing the hull in a frenzy, he smashes the machine gun barrel, bending it useless. Cloth from his tunic stuffs the viewing slits, blinding the gunners. "Comrades, grenades! Hit them now!" He bellows into the empty woods, bluffing an invisible squad. Inside, the Germans panic, claustrophobic trapped. They emerge, hands up, surrendering to this madman with an axe. Unbreakable grit. Drafted early in the war, he'd already tasted combat as a machine gunner, shredding enemy lines until shrapnel sidelined him. Reassigned to logistics, he could have faded into obscurity. Instead, that July day immortalized him. For his valor, he earned the Hero of the Soviet Union Medal, the USSR's highest honor. He returned to the front, fighting on until a sniper's bullet felled him in Hungary in January 1945. His story, buried in archives for years, reminds us, heroism often wears the face of the forgotten. But Ovcharenko wasn't alone in those chaotic early months. Further north, in the forests near Minsk, now Daugavpils, Latvia, another unlikely warrior emerged from the ranks of the overlooked. Ivan Sarita, a 22-year-old cook fresh from Food Technical School, embodied the Red Army's desperate improvisation. Called up in June 1941, he manned a field kitchen, ladling borscht and stew for weary comrades. Cooking under fire was routine. Facing tanks was not. Ovcharenko stands amid the carnage, chest heaving, the wagon's course whinnying in terror. He gathers the enemy papers, maps, orders, proof of the route, and climbs back aboard. The front needs supplies, after all. This private, once a simple machine gunner sidelined by wounds, has just turned a routine delivery into a legend. But legends don't win wars alone. As the Eastern Front ignites into the bloodiest theater of World War II, unsung heroes like him emerge from the shadows. Ordinary Soviets thrust into extraordinary defiance against the Nazi juggernaut. The Eastern Front, stretching from the Baltic to the Black Sea, was no grand strategy board. It was mud, snow, and slaughter on a scale history had never seen. Operation Barbarossa, Hitler's blitzkrieg invasion on June 22, 1941, caught the Red Army off guard, despite Stalin's stubborn denial of intelligence warnings. 3 million German troops, backed by Axis allies, surged across the border, aiming to crush the Soviet Union in weeks. They captured vast swaths of territory, encircling entire armies in Kiev and Minsk. Prisoners numbered in the hundreds of thousands, executed or marched to death camps. Villages burned, civilians caught in the crossfire, or worse, targeted in the Nazis' racial war of annihilation. Yet amid the collapse, pockets of resistance flared like embers in dry tinder. Men and women, soldiers and civilians, who refused to yield. Ovcharenko's stand was one such spark. Born in a humble village in the Luhansk region, he lacked formal education but possessed. July 13, 1941. Midday heat shimmers over the dusty roads near Peskavka, Ukraine. The air hums with the distant rumble of engines, like thunder rolling in from the horizon. Dmitry Ovcharenko, a broad-shouldered Red Army private with calloused hands from years of farm work, grips the reins of his horse-drawn wagon. Ammunition crates jostle in the back, food supplies stacked high, his lifeline to the front lines. Sweat beads on his forehead, but it's not just the sun. The Wehrmacht's advance has been relentless since June, and whispers of encirclement filter through the ranks like poison gas. Suddenly, shadows detach from the tree. German soldiers, 50 of them, rifles leveled, officers barking orders in clipped gutturals. They swarm the wagon, ripping Ovcharenko's rifle from his grasp. A lieutenant steps forward, pistol drawn, his eyes cold as steel under the peaked cap. "WR Fist 2? What are you carrying?" The interrogation begins, rough hands shoving him against the car. You can almost feel the knot in his stomach, the pulse pounding in his ears, as he sizes up the impossible odds. No backup, no escape. Just a man, a wagon, and the axe tucked aside the supplies, for chopping wood, not heads. In a blur of rage and instinct, Ovcharenko lunges. The axe swings, connecting with the lieutenant's neck in a sickening thud. Blood sprays across the dusty ground. Chaos erupts. The Germans freeze for a split second, long enough for him to yank 3 grenades from the crates. Pins pulled, he hurls them into the cluster. Explosions rip through the air, shrapnel tearing flesh, screams piercing the midday haze. 21 fall in the blast, bodies crumpling like discarded uniforms. The survivors scatter, firing wildly, but Ovcharenko is already moving, axe in hand, chasing down a fleeing officer. Another swing, another hit. The rest bolt into the woods, leaving their dead and documents behind.